So nice to see everyone. Thanks for joining us. So as everyone probably knows, we issued a statement as a team, I think a month or so ago, and we all kind of committed to educating ourselves as a team and having, important but sometimes difficult conversations to like learn how to move forward in the best way. So I think today is really the beginning of these sorts of conversations that we want to continue to have into the future. And it can guide our actions going into the future as well. So I think it's really great that everyone came to join us tonight. So we're going to have a two-part discussion today. The first part, we have Julia Karsten's class of 2019 and Mackenzie Lawrence, class of 2018, who have very graciously offered to share their experiences with us. And then in part two, it will be really a full discussion with everyone on the call. And we're all going to basically think about how, as HFT and the wider HFT community, can create a welcoming environment, for Black fencers and for other, marginalized groups. So with that, let's get started. Julia and Mackenzie, do you want to just introduce yourselves quickly to people who might not know you and maybe share a little bit of what you've been up to since you graduated?
Okay, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Mackenzie. So I'm class of 2018. I'm originally from Kansas City, and I joined the fencing team at Harvard. I was technically a walk-on, but I really enjoyed my experience. I love the team, and was captain my last year. And when I graduated, I had interned at Goldman, started working at Goldman like right after graduation. And so I've been here now for specifically with ETFs and asset management there.
And hi, I'm Julia Karstens. I graduated last May. I also walked onto the team, fenced epee, and then sort of fence saver. And yeah, I guess this team is really important to me. I know you guys also care a lot about these kinds of issues, and I think of the fencing team as a family, so excited to talk to people.
Great. So sport leaders and athletes have been at the forefront of recent discussions regarding race, racism, and systemic racism. And what role do you guys think that sports can play in addressing these issues?
Yeah, I could start if you want, Mackenzie.
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah, I think like sports just are a huge component of American life. And kind of Mackenzie and I were saying it's kind of a relatively objective realm where people can succeed without being affected relatively as much by prejudice and kind of racial stereotypes. And so I think it offers an opportunity for Black people to gain significant influence. And then that's obviously a good thing, but by the same token, and is kind of obvious from some recent movements, it's critical that we give athletes a voice to speak about their own beliefs and don't attempt to silence them and behave as though an athlete is a source of entertainment, not a fellow human being, is my thought.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this a little bit. Like, I think that sports do create a community that is very unique. A lot of the times I think the groups that make up sports teams would not have formed organically. So sports really can bring something sometimes very different and diverse group of people together. But I think sports and fencing specifically also addresses important race issues, and that it gives people like a voice, and opportunities that people wouldn't have had those chances to begin with. So it really helps, give people access to top schools the ability to travel, meet new people, meet different people, which for a lot of people was just not possible before. And then I think also, that's in large part because sports, like I was saying, like it gives people who, do have a silent voice, a real voice, because, like Julia was saying, sports and fencing can really be an equalizer of sorts. So, there are always biases in every aspect of life, and there are, certainly not as many Black fencers out there who are even able to be on the strip. But when you do get there, everything else being equal, so much of it is just about your performance, which is just not the case in a lot of other facets of life. And, in the workplace, we see that. And so I think that's something that makes, sports a big part of like addressing these issues, because it does just grant more diverse voices, access to have, what they have to say heard. Just like Julia said.
Great. And I think some people believe that sports, being an athlete, you should be kind of apolitical. And with your platform, sometimes it can be scary to, engage in issues that seem to be political. So do you have any advice on navigating social media and, overcoming a fear of saying the wrong thing?
Yeah, I can start. I definitely have a lot to say on the subject. I definitely, first of all, I think that, if you really are concerned that people are going to think that you are being fake or inauthentic by posting something, I think it's a good opportunity to kind of just like take a step back and look inwards. Like a lot of what this movement has been about, I think, is like just people sort of trying to reflect on, their privilege or lack thereof. So like, I think it's an opportunity to ask yourself, is there a reason that people might question that, my authenticity, or is there something, are you doing things in your personal life that are not supporting Black people or other minorities, or are you doing things to even hurt people in those, in those positions? And I also think if you are someone who is not active on social media or just not into posting, this type of content, that is completely fine. There are a lot of things you can do. You can reach out to friends. And for that, I personally feel that I would not, if someone reached out to me and, just wanted to see how I was doing, I would not feel that, you said the wrong thing or were inappropriate to reach out. I don't think many people would be angry that you checked in on a friend. But, you can donate, you can support Black businesses, join organizations, start organizations. But just to explain where a lot of people's feelings come in this arena, like you do have to recognize that social media is the way of the world now. And in many ways, and certainly due to the direction this movement has gone over the last few months, that people are feeling that, posting has become a barometer of sorts, just for letting people know that, they are welcome, that, you accept them and that you care for them and their issues, and, that you're trying to understand. So being performative doesn't help anybody. So you don't be, post or don't post. But I recognize that, in many ways that silence, firstly will inevitably make people, question where you stand. And then just the last thing I'll say there is that I think, there is something to be said for, how the individual will behave on social media. But I am really happy to see how Harvard Fencing has responded, just because I do think that organizations that are public faces and, truly influential have a real obligation to speak up. If you have a following, I feel like you do have that obligation to speak up, and, particularly in this situation, make potential recruits even know that they are welcome. But we can talk about that more later.
I totally agree with all of that. And I think it's very true. If you have any kind of following, think you can make an impact in any way, like it is in this era very important to kind of show that, because then you might be signaling that you don't have an opinion or you don't really care. And I think like Mackenzie said, if you're worried about being performative, there are very easy steps that you can take to ensure that your words are backed by actual action. And like, I think, of course, it can be kind of frustrating knowing, I know people are very nitpicky. I think it can be frustrating knowing you might be criticized for what you say, but if you can measures to make an impact, and I think you know that you are genuine and you are able to back up what you've done with that. And I think that it's also very easy to, like, instead of just reposting something that someone else made, like if you share something and you post kind of a statement saying, like, expressing your support and exactly what you feel. Can you hear that? So if you can do that, then it's not just reposting material. You're actually like kind of showing that you're taking a more active approach to showing support instead of just, sharing what somebody else said. I think if you add your own words to anything, then it makes it's a big differentiator.
Kind of going off that, how do you think that we can be better allies? Like what kind of shows that we're really listening? Is there anything in, like, specifically our body language or other specifics that we can kind of pay attention to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, there are a lot of ways you can be a better ally. I think, Julie and I were just saying, it's important to reach out. I really feel like sometimes people are hesitant about just following up and, seeing how their friends are doing. I think a lot of people from work reached out to me, like over the last few months, and like people who I think are very distant from, my life, or we're very quite different. But I think it was a good opportunity to just learn. People asked a lot of questions, and, in my case, I've been very open and trying to help people who, might not understand what it's like to be Black and have Black clients, and they need to understand, they're just different interactions. But I think, a lot of people are open to, discussion, and just just to show empathy and wanting to understand and learn from others, I think is key. And it's not just for, this situation, we're Black, but I think, it goes for a lot of minority groups as well. It's just important to be educated and to take the steps to really actually understand where other people are coming from.
Yeah, I think, like Mackenzie said, it is really important to just ask questions sometimes. I think that can go a long way in terms of showing people that you care. And then I think once you have asked, or if someone does bring something up, it's really important to just listen. And I think especially hold off on considering anything an overreaction, especially if you would never be in the position that's being described. I think sometimes it's really hard when you can't literally empathize with something, but it's good to, I think, take the time and try to, so that you don't kind of write off what anyone says when it's, their personal experience. I think that's just a huge part of it, because I do think a lot of people kind of assume that something seems really innocuous to them. And sometimes you need to realize that these things are not just logic based. You should really think about how things can make people feel.
Could you speak a bit about also how silence about racism is hurtful?
Yeah, I can go. So I think that, so I think personally, I think a lot of the silence I see comes from, people just not knowing what to say or how to say it, which I get can be hard. You don't want to mess it up, and you don't want your words to be misunderstood. And I get that it's hard. But I think it's important that everyone here recognize that, it really is a privilege, and not only a privilege for you to not have to speak up, but to be able to speak up without coming across as the angry stereotype. Like I recognize that not only if I speak up, but in many ways, like at work or, at school, even if I wear my hair naturally, like I risk being labeled as, the Black woman who is too liberal, who can't work well with white people. And, many of you are perfectly capable of living your life without ever having to think about or speak up against discrimination. Like if you leave this call and there's anything you take away from here, it should, it really should be that like your life will be fine. You will be happy. You will graduate, get promoted, and you can focus inwards on yourself and your own life, and just be happy. But if you're not fine moving through the world while other people have to suffer, like it's like imperative that you speak up when things are not right. Like it's not just about silence on social media, but like, silence when you see someone who is doing something wrong, or when you see people being hurtful, like verbally or physically. And, I don't think you have a right to celebrate and, praise Black artists and comedians and athletes if you're not championing and standing up for Black people, where it actually counts. Like you have to take the bad with the good. And it's critical that, you speak up when the world needs to change.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is such a huge differentiator when it comes to, people are claiming to be allies. If you are expressing that you support Black lives and you support your Black teammates, and like Mackenzie said, like Black public figures, I think it really says a lot if you will say that kind of thing on the surface, but then you can't handle like the mild discomfort that it might bring you to like make a statement when you see something that's wrong or something that's just blatantly racist. And I think also, like Mackenzie said, it's not just kind of the thought of doing that counts. It's the fact that, unfortunately, someone who isn't Black making a statement like that will seem much more logical and not emotional, just because that's the way that people react to these things. And I think it's really important for non-Black people to leverage that power to kind of, help.
So fencing is a pretty privileged sport. And when we look at our team, currently there are no Black student athletes. Why is this something that we should care about?
Yeah, I think for
Oh no, you got it.
a variety of reasons, but wait, mine's lagging.
You can go.
I can never tell. But I think there's obviously a ton of reasons. It's a very broad question, but like, first of all, it ties in with everything we were just saying about, supporting Black people. It really speaks volumes if you are, making an effort to recruit, befriend Black people. And I think that, it's not going to be a welcoming environment for a Black person if they look at our team and there's nobody else who's similar to them. That can make a lot of people really uncomfortable, and it's kind of just something that can turn into a vicious cycle if you let it. And I think it's also just really important to have exposure to people with different perspectives, like even for your own growth. It's just, it's important to not be too sheltered, and it's better for the entire team, I think, if you have a diverse group of people. And also, I think that there was a time when there weren't any Black fencers, but it's not the case anymore. Like, I think that it's important that an effort be made going forward. And we were both walk-ons, obviously, so.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just like everything Julia said, and it's, it's not just about you shouldn't only care about the issue because it touches you tangentially. Like, it's not just about, your own Black friends or even, the Black people you work with or care about. If you care about people, I think it's just important to help and speak up. It's really important that the team is an environment where Black people and other less represented minorities feel comfortable to join. And that's like that is all on, like, that's all on everybody on this call. Like, that's your responsibility. Like, I joined the team when there were no Black people. And of course it was something that I had to consider. That was, something I had to factor in when I was looking, where I wanted to go to college and where I wanted to fence. And I accepted that fact, but I'm only one person. I've had a certain experience that has made that, a situation that I can live within. But talent is going to look elsewhere because of the lack of diversity on this team. And like, I'm positive of that. And you can help that fact. Right now you can't help that. Like, that is the situation you guys are in because, because of the makeup of the team. But what you can do is, make the environment of HFT one where that first person will, hear about, the team and like the environment that you guys have and, how accepting it is, and that it's, it's an environment where people want to come and maybe they hear about it from other friends at NACS, and, it's just the environment that you put out there through your interactions and how you behave, because you represent the team in every facet of your life. And, also people are going to see how the team is on social media. So posting about, this panel and, making a statement for Black Lives Matter are, going to bring in, and hopefully going to bring in that first person. And, hopefully that person's going to, take that risk and come to the team. And if that culture remains and persists, maybe another person will eventually join. And, the team will maybe be even more talented, like Julia was saying, and grow to become more diverse and welcoming in many ways. So, there are a lot of talented Black fencers out there. It's not that there's a lack of them. So, it's on all of you to make the team an environment that supports that.
Yeah. And also, I forgot to say this, but kind of going back to the first question you asked about, like, how sports can contribute to these movements. I think Harvard fencing is a particularly good example of how sports can extend beyond college, because obviously we're all still very close people. It provides people with career opportunities. I know that I benefited from, kind of role models and mentors on the team when I was trying to get through a tough course or find a job. So it really does a much bigger impact than you would think, I think, at first glance. And so it's more important than it would initially seem.
There's been a question from Erwin in the audience, and I think it's really great. And I think if anyone else in the audience has a question, you can use the raise hand function and we can call on you after that. But the question is, when we're communicating with friends or family or teammates who don't really care about being better allies, how can we talk to them while kind of staying away from cancel culture and working to understand each other and have productive conversations?
Yeah, I think Julia and I were actually just talking about that today, about cancel culture. And I think, like, I won't speak for Julia, but I feel like a lot of the discussions need to be, just a lot more productive. I think a lot of what I've seen is, all or nothing. Like, if you don't feel the way I feel, then that's it. And I think, I know a good amount of you on this call, and I feel like I've tended to be somebody who can, have pretty good discussions, and I try to be as open as possible. So I think that can always go, go a really long way. Like, I think that a lot of people are not going to have the same opinions you are going to have, whether or not you think they're right. But it's critical that, you aren't shutting somebody off for the way they feel, first and foremost, because you're never going to be able to change somebody's mind if you are, not open to, hearing their side. And I think in a lot of ways, I feel the tension or the stress of me thinking that there is really no opinion, right, in this matter. There's a right and a wrong. But if you are trying to change somebody's mind, the approach of how you have that discussion is key. It has to be productive, and you have to be able to have a real discussion with somebody else.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about how kind of, and we obviously can't speak for all Black people, but I think cancel culture can be very toxic. Just kind of can be very alienating, where if somebody doesn't know something just because they haven't learned about it, or they grew up in a very, homogenous community, they might seem kind of malicious, but often that kind of thing stems from ignorance. And while, of course, I think we all frown upon people who react to being criticized for saying something problematic, like that seems very obviously wrong. But I think it can also be wrong to attack someone who's made a mistake without, trying to teach them, or recognizing that you're not going to get someone to see your side by just going after their core and then not trying to understand why it is that they might have felt that way. So I think you have to be very patient with those people, and I know it's frustrating. But if you do kind of wait and try to just let them see your side, I think sometimes it gets a little bit easier.
And I'd also say, just like on the other side of the discussions, if you're, someone who is trying to learn more from, a minority or somebody who you're trying to understand their experience, I went through an experience at work where everybody was reaching out and asking a lot of questions, and, they kind of realized that racism's still around and wanted to understand why and how. And it's like, I have been trying to be as open and able to answer questions as possible, but I have a lot of friends who don't feel that way. Again, not speaking for anyone else, but I would just say it's, try to be sensitive to that fact, because no one has a responsibility to tell you about their own personal experiences, and, to educate you on, what it's like to be Black, or, what racism is, because, the onus just, shouldn't just be on the burdened, I would say.